It's hard to think of a sector in the economy that has been hit harder than the big category of hospitality and tourism, and specifically hotels. I mean, ask yourself, unless it was a matter of high urgency, would you travel right now and book a hotel and stay somewhere just for the fun of it? So, okay, if you say yes, you are brave and adventurous, more than I am. But that business has cratered to the bottom. My yardstick is what has happened to Unite here, the union that represents most unionized hotel workers like housekeepers and catering workers, or especially in Las Vegas, casino workers. That business, the hotel business, just evaporated, and tens of thousands of union members got laid off. Now, honestly, I don't see an easy path back to a place where hotel workers are getting their jobs back in big numbers until there is a vaccine and until a big hunk of people are actually vaccinated. But I wanted to check in with hotel workers and find out how life looks right now. And we know it's difficult, knowing that it isn't pretty with their paychecks gone, the enhanced unemployment running out, and soon their health coverage costs will be almost entirely on the workers once important union financial support runs out. So, what better place to take the pulse than the paradise of Hawaii, where you might know tourism is king? So, it's great to be joined by Lourdes Maquera and Bryant de Venecia. Lourdes has been a housekeeper for 10 years at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel in Waikiki, Hawaii, which is owned by Kyoya Hotels and Resorts and managed by Marriott. She is an immigrant from the Philippines and a mother of 3 kids. She's been involved with Unite Here's Local 5 for many years and was one of the most visible leaders during the 51-day strike against the hotel in 2018. Bryant is the union's communications organizer. And Lourdes, I thought we would start with you and tell us a little bit about how you got into this job, how you became a housekeeper at the hotel. What led you to this?
Okay, so my name is Lourdes Maquera, and I work at the Royal Hawaiian, which is under Kyoya Ohana LLC company. So prior to my working in the hotel, the Royal, I am a caregiver and at the same time a cashier, one of the mall in here. So thinking about like, you know, working 2 jobs compared to like working in a union hotel, like it uh, like compensate the whole salary that I have, the wage that I have with the 2 jobs. So I choose to go to the hotel, union hotel
So the
company.
so the benefits were much better. The pay, the obviously,
Much way far better than the one that I've been working.
and plus you only had to work one job to get those benefits
Yes,
and that pay, which
yes,
is a nice thing. So
yes, yes.
your life became more sane, if I could say, and more organized. And
Yes.
since you're a mom as well, that probably made a difference too.
Yes, I'm a mother of 3, and I start my work like getting up from our house like 5:30 in the morning because I have to go down Waikiki for downtown for my first job, and then after my first job, I go straight to my second job, which is I will end up like 11 o'clock at night because I'm closing, and then go home like most probably like around 12 to 1 o'clock in the morning already when I get home because
Hmm.
I wasn't driving that time, so a lot of time, it's consuming. So getting into the hotel, like I start in the morning 8 o'clock, I get out like 7, and then go home maybe around like 5. I can cook, I can do chores and help my kids do their homework, so it's much better
And I
and
assume
working.
also you are less exhausted, and so you probably have a whole lot more patience
Oh
for your
yes,
kids and for the
yes,
rest of life.
yes,
So
definitely.
what was the work like from your point of view before the pandemic? Did you like the work? Did you like the hotel? I mean, were the bosses there because there was a union contract and protected you? Were they kind of controlled a little bit and you had a lifestyle within your workplace that was at least manageable?
Well, since we are under the union, there are some, I would say, like limits wherein management can, control. Instead, as the workers under union, we do the control over it. Like, there are some um, rules that it should comply with whatever that is stated in the contract.
Hmm.
So, it's not more on the management side,
And as
I
I
would say.
understand it, since the pandemic started, you've been out of work, or at least virtually all of the folks working at the hotel, as I understand from Bryant, have been laid off.
Yes, yes, because of the pandemic, we've been laid off like since March. So it's kind of scary to me. We're worried about it already.
How are you surviving?
Well, right now we are under unemployment benefits we're receiving from the government, and still connected to the company, though it looks like it's a temporary layoff, but it's a good thing that we're still, under government's unemployment.
So are you finding it harder, obviously, to pay bills and to make, ends meet?
Yes, yes.
And
It's,
have you faced a crisis in terms of paying rent, or just describe that in a minute or so?
yeah. Uh, as of now, since we don't have the additional 600 already with our unemployment, and then we're about to run out of our medical, so we're kind of worried because getting into this phase wherein we have to pay for our own medical, which is either we're going to go on Cobra or we're going to go on another kind of medical plan. It's still out from our pocket, which is additional burden on our budget, and we're paying like thousands of the rent, and then some our utilities. So I don't know. We really, it's really hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so, shifting to you, Brian, if we take a step back and look at the big picture, give us a sense of what's happening to your membership in Hawaii, and maybe because you're very obviously up on what's happening to Unite here throughout the whole country, what's happening to the situation for everyone, both in Hawaii and throughout the country for unionized hotel workers?
It's difficult for all of us right now. This pandemic really impacted all of our members. I think it is up to 80% of the local five membership.
Mm.
We are lucky and fortunate that we have heroes working in the front lines right now, which are healthcare workers. But the great majority of our membership, which are hotel and food service workers, they're out of work. And like Lourdes has shared, this has been since March, and we don't know when we're going to reopen. Mainly because here in Hawaii, it's a bit different. We do have a lot of our tourists come from Asian countries and Europe, and also the U.S. mainland. So we are not only it's not only contingent to how our U.S. government is going to handle the crisis, but also worldwide, globally, how are the governments in Asia and Australia and New Zealand, for example, in Europe, are going to handle travel and like
Hmm.
all those rules that allow tourists here in Hawaii to visit. Um, in terms of nationally, it is difficult because our members are a lot of food service workers, a lot of hotel workers. It is it is in this point of stillness. This COVID-19 really halted everything in a way that we cannot go back to work. And I know that states are doing everything very differently in terms of unemployment, about healthcare, but our members are worried. We do not know when we're going to get our healthcare coverage. And it is appalling to worry about healthcare in the middle of a pandemic. Like Lourdes shared, we as Local 5 were able to extend our healthcare coverage to most of our members until end of September using our own money. but we can only do so much, so we're hoping that both our government leaders and our employers will do more to help our members, because we run the economy. Our workers here in Hawaii are the gears that run the industry. So we hope that they need to step up for us.
So let me just underscore what you said, Brian, and ask you to clarify, because I think when you talked about healthcare, what you meant was when folks are working, the
Mhm.
employer contributes into the healthcare and the health and welfare fund, and that's how
Correct.
members get their coverage. When folks are not working in this way, they're not contributing because each contribution comes from members' work essentially. So the local, both locally and nationally, is taking money out of its own treasury to cover that cost to make sure people are covered. Is that how it's working?
Right now, I only know about Local 5. I'm not
Okay.
sure about the other locals. But yes, Local 5 use our own trust fund benefits that was both have contribution from employers and our own members. But that was funds that we built over decades that we're using for a couple of months to pay
Mm.
for our workers' healthcare insurance. So it is hard. It is hard for everyone.
And obviously, there's a limit to that, how much money the local has to support 12,000 members, 9,000 of whom are out of work, right?
Correct. Yeah. And again, our income as a union is significantly reduced because our members are out of work.
And
So
one other question to you, Brian, before I go back to Lourdes. Um, when you think about reopening, part of it relates to how, as you point out, governments are going to react. If quarantines are lifted, travel restrictions are lifted, but also some of that has to do with the consumer's own comfort level and
correct.
willingness to travel. Now, one thing is, how do you get to Hawaii? They have to fly mostly, right? So
Yes.
people have to feel comfortable flying on airplanes. But to your point and to your industry, people have to feel comfortable going into a hotel. So one of the things I noted is that both the union required and requested and demanded way back in March when the pandemic started that the industry really institute some sort of new protocols inside the hotels. And now I saw on Marriott's website they've instituted some new protocols as well in terms of cleanliness, making sure things are sanitized. Is it your sense that that stuff is enough and that it is going to attract people to come back quick enough?
Hmm. Lourdes can share more because we were able to do safety inspections in our hotel. We've been pushing this. Just for a quick background, Hawaii is the most isolated place in the world. And it could have been easier if our employers were more cooperative. But we've been having 3-digit cases every day, and we are a very small state. But we have been pushing our employers to have a more stringent safety protocols. We've been pushing safe hotel, safe Hawaii, because it needs to start with us. For our travelers to have that confidence that they're going to a place where they're not going to contract the virus, we
Mm.
need to make sure, and we need to advertise our industry here to be the safest place to be. And we did not see over the last several months the plans for reopening from our hotel employers. So what we did is we actually um, organize our own safety inspections so we can see what's happening in each of our hotel properties.
Hmm.
And Lourdes can share what she's observed over the last inspection.
Please go ahead, Lourdes.
Yes, just like Brian told, we did some inspection to some of the hotels in here, and as we observe, like they're not ready. They're not ready for business. What I mean is like um, they don't have any signage at all. Like public areas we're in, uh, guests should be coming in, and then elevators, no sign at all. Like some of the hotels, they don't have the sanitizer, you know, um, the dispenser in there. Where in every touch that you do, that you might be carrying or may not, you may be having like the COVID virus, and everything that you touch, you have to be safe. That's what we wanted. Uh,
Hmm.
so we observed that all the protocols that we've been asking from the management, like they are not complying it. That's why we're really serious about pushing on this inspection to make sure that everybody, and especially the workers, will not get contracted with this virus. And so some of the hotels too, like in the front desk, they don't have like plexiglasses
Mm,
wherein there is a direct contact with the guest, and you're not sure if they're carrying it or not.
mm.
And at the same time, we don't want them to be, in a place where they get harmed or get the virus too. So it's a vice versa concern regarding workers and our guests. And it's a good thing because we're protecting also the manage. I mean, like the business
Mhm.
in a whole picture.
And you brought up two elements of that. One is about touching surfaces. And from what I understand from reading about the science of that, they're now finding that that's less of a concern, relatively speaking, meaning that the virus is not easily communicated by touch. But your
Hmm.
point, the other point, which is really important, especially in a hotel situation, is the ability to be socially distanced from people. And
Yes.
let's say you're in, for example, an elevator, you want to go up to the 12th floor. How do you just make sure that there's not like a huge crush of people inside
Yes.
an elevator? Who's monitoring that? All these kinds of
Yeah.
questions, right? So the
Yes.
front
Yes.
desk, when you're receiving people, that to me is the biggest concern that from the worker's standpoint, right?
Yes. Definitely. Like, what we are asking them is that because of the social distancing protocol that we should imply. I mean, like like limitations. Someone is really checking on how many people getting into the elevator, and then maintaining the distance. Those are the factors that, I mean, like, considerations that we should take a look on it prior to getting to the start of the business. So until now, only a few hotels doing it, but not the whole thing that we are really asking from the company. So we're very, very serious about this, and we do strictly having, I mean, like a continuous inspection in all the union hotels that we have.
And Lourdes and or Brian, I wanted to ask you a question. Either of you can respond to this. I did a segment, I believe it was last week, it may have been 2 weeks ago, about the pressure that workers are feeling on the part of employers to go back to work, even if they're not feeling well, even if they're sick. And because we don't have in this country actually paid sick leave, which I think is crazy because the rest of the world or most of the sort of advanced countries have it, people are being forced to go back to work. Is that a concern on your part that once the industry opens, that there's going to be pressure on the part of workers like yourself, housekeepers, that are going to be demanded by the employers? You got to come back to work now, and that there's not going to be an ability to say, no, I don't feel well, I want to stay home and still
Mhm.
get paid.
Yes, I can answer for that. In our contract, this is the good thing because in our contract, it is included about the safety, meaning like if they workers doesn't feel safe and they don't feel like they will be um, uh, confident to go to work, then they can say that to the management, and management should not be forcing them like you know uh, I called you and you should come to work. No,
Mm-hmm.
if there are scenarios wherein a worker can see that they're not safe, then they should be respected on that decision. So, you know, we're setting um, this protocol wherein management and union uh, should have to, agree upon that when it comes to calling workers, there are some considerations that should set up.
Brian, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, definitely. We actually have an example of how it should work going back to work. One of our hotel properties, the Kahala Hotel, They were one of the employers who really communicated and did bargaining with us. So a bunch of Kahala hotel workers, they organized themselves and, pushed the management to have safety protocols. And they actually reopened, kind of have a soft reopening. And what they did is every department of the hotel, they had um, a safety committee for each department. So because hotel workers are the expert in what it's like to work in a hotel, and they know what it's like to have a safe workplace. So they did that, and when they started calling back people, it actually worked as a volunteer basis where they ask based on seniority who wants to work first.
Mhm.
And people who maybe are taking care of someone who's immunocompromised, or people who need to who also themselves are immunocompromised, of course they did not volunteer, so they have the option to stay in unemployment insurance for a little bit, while the workers who are willing to go back to work because they feel safe, they did go back to work. So, again, what Lourdes shared, they know what it is like to be in a safe workplace, because we can see huge lobbies with signs, plexiglass. Yeah, those are amazing. But the back of the house, we have
Mm.
limited space in their locker rooms. Our like telephone operation offices are very small and cramped. Elevators, I guess, again, are another example. And even clocking in, for example, we use fingerprints to clock in, right, Lourdes? And like, if there's a machine where every hundreds of workers in one shifts touch, and there's no hand sanitizers,
Mm.
I mean, again, touching surfaces are a bit, we don't know a lot, but it is a scare for a lot of workers,
Yeah.
knowing that hundreds of folks touch that machine. Why will I do it? So yeah. Lourdes, thank you for sharing that. That's an amazing insight. Yeah.
And Lourdes, let me ask you as we start to wrap up the conversation. Obviously, as you expressed before, the financial pressure on you is tremendous. Talk a little bit about your coworkers, your friends. I assume you're hearing similar stories from many of the people you work with.
Yes, like because I am a leader also in our union, so we have this committee system, and most of our coworkers, they do refer to me, and then share their concerns too. So a lot of them is really worried because some of them say like, oh, our savings already running out soon, so we don't know what should we do. And then again, also with the medical. So, you know, our situation here, I would say in general that it's really getting harder and harder. Like some of them are paying mortgage, either mortgage or rent, car loans, educational loans for their kids. But I know that for the educational part, I know government is doing something about it. But then, yeah, including their loans, so and then their everyday living, which is if we could do so much for them to help them. Really.
Well, we wish you the best from this show and from my audience, obviously. And I've been covering the issue of workers in the pandemic from the beginning of the pandemic, from poultry workers to airline workers, transport workers. And please do come back on the show and update us and let us know how you're going. You're welcome to come back and update us anytime. And thanks for being on the show.
We will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan.